the auditorium or the gym. Some fancy doohickey on there. But yeah, perfect. So with that being said, right now we're just gonna ask everyone to grab their cameras. And if you guys don't have a camera, that is okay. If you guys are using your phones, Mariel and I actually have a couple of recommendations for camera apps that you guys can download and that we've tried and tested and actually so actually here, we'll just actually write it down here.
I got it.
Thank you.
Oh, I can't spell. My bad. Also, there is going to be like a lot of information being said. So if you guys want to get notebooks or anything that you need to like take notes, you guys can go grab that too.
Nice. ECT has captured my. Nice. Excellent.
So who here actually has a camera with them right now? Okay,
yes, give us a thumbs up. Yes, give us a
or
thumbs up.
Or show it. You guys don't need a thumbs up. You can show it if you want.
Yes, please.
You can flex
nice.
your...
Yes. Flex
nice,
the
Gabe.
camera.
I like
nice.
Gabe.
Gabe, what you have? What you packing heat? Okay, everyone. Team Canon. I see everyone's rocking Team Canon for now. Okay. Anyone Team Sony? Okay. Anyone Team? Oh, nice, Megan. I see that. Hands up. Anyone rocking Pentax? Anyone rocking Panasonic? No one. Anyone rocking Fujifilm? Yeah, that's all of us. Nice, perfect. So while you guys are downloading that, if you guys are still downloading the app, that's totally fine. What we're actually going to do right now is we're actually going to just play the True North Conference recap video. So if you, our apologies if it's a little bit laggy and buggy. C'est la vie, such as life. But if you guys want to just watch with us, you are most welcome to. And here we go. If you want to play, please play. There it is.
That you are loved, that you are saved. Let's approach God as who we are, as His sons and daughters. Let's encounter God this night. So we will sing, we will shout, and we will jump, all for His glory. And so let's come before His holy presence as one Catholic Church.
you go. So yeah, so like I said, that was the Pacific Region's True North Conference recap video. And what was that? That was last year? That was last year, right? Yes, that was last year. Perfect. So just give us one moment here. Merci beaucoup.
Oh yeah, the reason why I want to show it was because it's kind of like I don't know, it's kind of like the byproduct of what our service role is. Basically, when you serve videography for YCOM specifically, you'll be serving events, especially like the longer ones, like the weekend long ones, because that's the ones that generally need the recap videos. Yeah, I don't know how else to describe it, Toby.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mariel pretty much captured it in kind of a simple way. Is that, yeah, kind of when you see those recap videos on YouTube or on Instagram, or even on IGTV or even on Facebook, that in itself is kind of the time that we spend, the time that we come together as a team, and to be able to prepare and to discern kind of how everything is going to go about. And in the end comes a video that we use to glorify God, right? And I think that's why we're all here, is to be able to use video in itself and photo. I know most of you guys had come from the photo workshop as well. Is to use YCOM as one of the more stronger instruments to be able to glorify God. And I think now that the world is so engrossed and like in social media, and just like we were talking about TikTok earlier, I think when the world is so encapsulated in social media, and when we see everything on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram and YouTube, I think what better way than the youth being able to lead by using social media and be able to glorify Him. Yeah, amen. Amen. Sick. So that being said, so everyone has their camera. Yes. Give me a thumbs up. Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Is the app downloaded yet? Give me a thumbs up. Thumbs up. Dope. Excellent. Beautiful. Perfect. So now that we've downloaded the app and we have our cameras, I know most of you guys had come from the photo workshop as well. I know we're gonna talk a little bit about what they had talked about as well. But for the people that didn't go to the photo workshop, no worries. We will still run through it with you all. But if you have any questions or any concerns or favors, don't hesitate to ask Marielle or myself, or even Gabriel and Patricia here. Dope. Excellent. Awesome. Perfect. So filming. So these are kind of the basics when it comes to videography. So of course, exposure triangle, so aperture, your ISO, and your shutter speed. And then now here's where it gets a little bit different for video. Is your frame rates, your camera movements, your transitions, and composition and storytelling, right? Perfect. Awesome. Give you guys to write that down a little bit. Excellent. Beautiful. Nice. Perfect. So the exposure triangle. So for me, the way that I like to think about the exposure triangle is pretty much like best friends. So in one way or another, your ISO, your shutter speed, and your aperture are all going to work together as a team. And when one of them needs a little help, one of them, either the ISO or aperture or shutter speed and ISO, vice versa, will kind of come in play together and kind of help each other out, so that you kind of get an exposed image and an image that you're able to see, maybe for photo or for video, but in this case, for video. But the first one we're going to talk about is ISO. Perfect. So ISO is the measurement of how sensitive a camera's image sensor is to light. So yeah, so pretty much how sensitive it is to light, yes. So generally speaking, you want to keep your ISO just as low as possible. And the reason being is you don't want to introduce grain. And grain is pretty much what the byproduct of if your camera is working just a little bit harder than it needs to. Perfect. Yes, yeah, byproduct if your camera needs to work a little bit harder. Of course, again, in certain scenarios, you would need to crank the ISO when you need to, and that is totally fine. Perfect. Has everyone found the ISO on their phone and the app? Give me thumbs up, thumbs up. There you go. Excellent, excellent. Dope, excellent, awesome. And so we're going to show you guys an example over here. Nice. So we're going to show you guys an example. So on the left side, you can see that at ISO 100, so the lowest that you can go, the image is actually relatively clean. You can see that the lines are sharp. And you can still see, and you can still see a lot of information. You can still see the windows. You can see the clouds, and you can see the gradient from the orange to the blue. And this is what we call a clean image. So yeah, clean image. That's what you call clean image. Awesome. And then as well on the right side. So, you know, in a darker scenario, let's say maybe in the gym where there's not enough lights, or yeah, maybe usually in the where there's not enough lights, or in an auditorium, you'd want to bump up the ISO. But obviously, when you push it just a little bit too far, you're gonna get a lot of this grain here just around the image, and that's what we call a noisy image. And of course, nowadays cameras are really, really good nowadays, to the point where you can push it above 3200, as you can go even more. That would all really depend on your camera. Yeah, depend on the camera and how old the camera is. But generally speaking, that's kind of what you'd be looking at for ISO. Nice, excellent. Everyone's still good? Give me a thumbs up if y'all are still good. Nice, excellent. Thank you guys. Awesome. Next is aperture. Perfect. So I'm actually going to bring in a little example of mine. Bear with me, guys. So aperture is pretty much the size of an opening through which light passes through the lens. So again, it's pretty much the way that I like to look at this is our eyes. So when we look in the dark, obviously our pupil tends to dilate just a little bit, so it can accommodate for how much light comes into the eye. Same thing as well with cameras. So obviously with cameras, if you just need a little bit more light, then you crank up that aperture, and more light will come into contact with your sensor. So here's a lens. Here's a Nikon 50mm lens. And so if you look at the inside, actually, I don't know if you can see that. Let me know if you can see that. See that? Give me a thumbs up. Obviously, you can see that that hole is very small. And if you can imagine, there isn't going to be a lot of light coming through that lens. But when we lower the aperture, you can see that the hole is just getting a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger. So where you can see my whole head in the back there. Perfect. So obviously when you do that, again, you're gonna get more light, but as well, you're gonna get that blurrier background, or yeah, some people call it bokeh or bokeh, something like that. And usually when people do that, it's so that you can separate the foreground from the background. And obviously, as well, when you go to a higher number, so something like on the bottom here, something like f8 to f22, which is a lot of your subject and a lot of your background is going to be less blurrier. So between the separation between the two, there isn't going to be as much, but everything's going to be in much, much more focus. So when you're taking pictures of, or when you're taking a video of a group, group shot, or you're taking a video of a landscape and you want to be able to see as far as the mountains and as close to you as the grass, then you want to higher your aperture.
Increase your aperture.
Thank you. You want to increase your aperture. Thank you, Marielle. I appreciate that. Nice. So here's another example. So you can see from the left to the right, they're all going to be relatively similar. But when we look at a higher aperture, such as f5, you can see that the leaves on the trees are still kind of the focus of the shot, but you can see in the background that the leaves in the back are starting to get a little bit more blurry, right? And as we keep going to the left or to the right, sorry, the subject slowly, their focus gets a little bit more shallower. right? And then you can even see in the background that the background is just even more blurrier. And again, usually when you use a lower number like f1.8 or f2.8, it's just to give that little bit of separation. One, separation to your background and foreground, and two, just to give you a little bit more light so that you're able to see in darker scenarios. Perfect.
Were you
Everyone
guys
good?
able to find that on your cameras?
Yes.
Yes, no? Awesome.
Give me a thumbs up if you're able to find it on the camera app or on your camera. So, excellent, 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 nice, awesome, nice. And next is shutter speed. So this is going to be the length of time on how exposed your image sensor is to light. And so generally speaking, when you have a higher shutter speed, you're going to freeze motion. And then when you're lowering shutter speed, you're going to get a lot of motion blur. So with higher shutter speed, if you want to freeze action, like maybe like sports, mainly sports or action, some sort of action, or there's a lot of movement and you want to solidify it, you'd want to use a higher shutter speed. Again, if there's not enough light and you can't go any more farther with your aperture and your ISO, then of course you'd want to lower your shutter speed. But just be wary because that starts to introduce motion blur. And in our example over here, so if you look on the left, your shutter speed is 1/120th of a second on the left side, and you can see that the lines are pretty much the lines are straight, and none of them are kind of mixing with each other. And that's because, again, higher shutter speed is going to introduce you're going to solidify the movement, and there's not going to be a lot of movement in your shot. And as well as you look on the right, though, at a shutter speed of 4 seconds, you're opening up that camera to be able to be exposed to more light. So obviously you can see that all those lines that you've seen on the left are now kind of merging all together into one beautiful thing. All right. So both definitely have their own applications for kind of depending what you're doing. But just in a second, you're going to see why shutter speed is going to be not going to be much of a big importance. Yeah, and there you go. And frame rate. So like I was saying, with frame rates and shutter speed, you're not going to really adjust it a lot because usually when kind of the rule of thumb for shutter speed is you want a double of your frames per second. So frames per second is how many frames are coming through on that sensor. And so usually for photo, you're only maybe getting 2, 3, 4, shots in a couple of seconds, right? But if you can imagine 24 up to 60 frames on your camera is quite a lot in a second. So 24 frames in a second, you'd want to double your shutter speed by 2. So that's kind of a good rule of thumb. And that's how you should kind of look about it when you're looking for any different kind of frames per second. So there's cinematic, broadcast, and slow motion. Slow motion, that can also differ from different cameras. Some of them can even go up to 120 frames per second. Some of them can even go crazier, but generally speaking, most cameras and most phones should be able to do 60 frames nowadays. Perfect, nice.
That makes sense for everybody? Thumbs up if it makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Yes. Excellent, excellent. Nice. So composition is kind of a big thing as well. Reason being is that it's pretty much how to frame a shot, right? So, obviously when you're shooting, you want to be able to make it, one, pleasing to the eye, but as well to be able to capture the whole scenario and what's happening. And there's a couple of them that you can kind of apply into videography, but we're going to be talking about a few of them here. So the first one that we're going to be talking about, is the rule of thirds. And so kind of the best way to think about rule of thirds is thinking about it as a tic-tac-toe board, right? So when you're looking in your camera, you can I think there's that option as well to enable rule of thirds. It should be like a little tic-tac-toe grid. And it's going to help you be able to place your objects in the intersections above. So this is kind of the most common way of composition. And so what you'd want to do is you'd want to place your subject on the intersecting lines. So on the top left and right in the intersecting line over there, and in the bottom left to right as well. And if you can see, Joker is obviously in the top right. And when you look at it, and when you look at a photo or a video for that matter, your eyes tend to dart in the corners first, and that's why rule of thirds is kind of one of the more commonly used composition templates. Same as well on the bottom. When you look at the two subjects, they're both intersected at the two crossroads, right? And that's just to give them a kind of that's just to give them all your attention, so that you're kind of paying attention to the conversation and what they're talking about and what they're doing. Thumbs up if that makes sense. Thumbs up, dope, 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 excellent. Next is symmetry. So this is kind of the opposite of what I just talked about in the rule of thirds. And yeah, the first thing is that it breaks the rule of thirds. And usually you're going to be putting the subject right dab smack in the middle. And again, that's just to give them that all your attention right in the middle. And one reason is that it causes tension. So maybe you could be recording the church inside when you're videotaping the crucifix up in the front, or maybe you're taking a video of the altar up in the front of the gym or the auditorium, right? Being able to put that subject up in the front just gives all that attention over to the subject. There you go. Nice, excellent. Thumbs up if that makes sense. Thumbs up, doperino, excellent. Nice. And then the next one is leading lines. So leading lines is the use of lines to draw the eye to a key element. So if you can see at the top, the ceiling lights are directed towards the two protagonists up in the middle. And the nice thing about this is that depending on how you're shooting, leading lines can come to you very easily, and some of them can come a little bit tougher than others, right? So being able to look at the floor or look at the ceiling, most where there are a lot of beams or lines on the bottom of the gym floors, right? Helps kind of redirect all that attention back onto the subject, right? And so if you can kind of see, this kind of also touches a bit with symmetry, right? If you can see that they're both as well in the middle, but at the same time, same with the bottom shot, that bottom shot is as well leading into rule of thirds. So they both kind of work hand in hand together, right? Perfect. Dope. Thumbs up if that makes sense. Thumbs up if that makes sense. Dope, dope, dope. Excellent. And natural framing. So I think this is kind of one of the more pleasing compositions for everyone. Reason being is that it happens so often in events. In events. And it's using natural surroundings, peoples or objects to create the frame. So if you can see the top photo, you can see that the couple at the top in the middle is surrounded by a triangle, right? So you can tell that the sparkles at the top are your kind of the tip of your triangle, and then the crowd, the congregation is kind of the supporting lines on the left and right, and that kind of fills in the triangle, right? And so that kind of puts them right in the middle, and that leads your eyes to them. Same as well on the bottom, and if you can see, it's a little bit dark, so please bear with us. But you can see that on the left and on the right, there are these black bars, and they're actually not black bars; they're actually curtains. So like I said, using objects or using curtains for this example helps you create that frame, right? And being able to put that worship leader right in the middle. And again, clearly the shot has used rule of thirds, right? Rule of thirds putting the worship leader on the left top, rule of third. Yes, excellent, nice. Yeah, that makes sense. Does that make sense? Thumbs up if that makes sense. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Nice.
Cool. If you actually notice, you can go back to the first one. If you actually notice in what Toby and I do, like in the more recent Pacific videos, or even like, yeah, the most recent Pacific videos, we like to use natural framing a lot. Like the one you guys will probably notice if you rewatch some of them is that you'll have, like, for worship leaders, they'll be in the center, but then we'll be using like two people, like we'll be in the crowd and we'll be using like two people's shoulders or two people's heads, and that'll be kind of framing the shot so that the attention is more on the worship leader, if that makes sense. Yeah. The next part though of filming is the angles. So this works really, like, this pretty much works hand in hand with composition, and it's another thing to keep in mind when you are planning to frame, on how you frame shot pretty much. So the four main ones we're going to talk about are the bird's eye view, the eye level, low angle, and high angle. So for bird's eye view, when it shows up, yeah. So this is generally when it's directly above the subject or characters. And it's used for very specific reasons, such as conveying emotions or portraying scenes. And it makes the subject seem insignificant, and it can also give a level of power to the audience. So in this specific picture or example, the characters don't know what's happening to the ice, but we were given that power to see it. And because of that, we are able to more emotionally invest ourselves in the scene, and we're more worried about them because we're like, okay, that's a pretty big crack. Like, they don't know that, and you don't know what's going to happen after. And so bird's eye view can help you convey those kinds of emotions for your audience. And there's another thing called the aerial shot, which is, if you saw in the beginning of the TNC video, yes, that's the movie, Pat. I've been trying to figure out where it's from, but yes, that's the movie. But at the beginning of the TNC video, you'll see there's like a sweeping shot of Chandos, and you'll see the field. That's an aerial shot, and it's slightly different from a bird's eye view, because the aerial shot just pretty much introduces like the environment, or like, yeah, it doesn't really have a subject, and it's more of kind of like a filler shot. Yes, they are recommending that movie. The next one is the high angle. Convey narrative information, elicit emotional response, which is what we see in the first one. A lot of people like to show like a high angle when somebody's like on top of a building, and then they'll like to look down so that you're able to oh my gosh, I keep getting distracted by the answers. But yeah, so like you'll be basically feeling the sense of fear when you like look down and see how high up somebody shot is used, is that you see Hawkeye actually facing away from it. So in that sense, you actually are able to tell how fearless he is about his fall down, pretty much. And I guess it's from the Justice League movie or Power Rangers, whatever. And what's it called? High angle can also be used to convey character information, such as like the state of vulnerability characters are in, such as the second picture, which is Thor and Captain America. They're looking up. I believe this is when like those flying centipede looking alien things, those big, you know what I'm talking about? Okay, I don't know. There's some sort of alien flying up there, and you can see how much bigger they are just based off the fact of this shot, and you can just kind of see how vulnerable they are. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, stop. Whatever, Gabe. Okay. Next. Next is eye level. So this is just just refers to the level of your camera being placed at the same height of the character's eyes. And yeah, and it's used to show an equal level of power, just like this, like if the filmmakers want you to connect with this specific character or like want to portray them as like somebody you want to get along with. And it also can convey conversations, just like when there's like dialogue scenes. And it can also connect you to the emotions on the scene, especially if you want to capture the more complex emotions. Like in the Hunger Games, you can see Katniss Everdeen. Yes, Legolas, thank you so much. Yeah, you can see her face, and you're able to see how much more confident she is, or fearless, or whatever emotion you're picking up from this that you probably won't be able to get from any other angle. And the next one, which is my favorite, is the low angle. So this generally refers to when the shot or the camera angle is positioned anywhere below the eye line and it's pointed upward. And this is generally used to convey power depending on who your subject is. So it can show whether one's more powerful or one's like vulnerable. Green Power Ranger, yes, thank you so much. Yeah, and it works really well with the high angle shots. So in this specific example, you see how the low angle is used on Shrek, and you see how he kind of towers over whatever the subject is. And yeah, yes, it is filmed with the camera, guys, come on. And yeah, and you can see how Donkey has a high angle view, so you can see how much more powerful Shrek is in this scene. And yeah, you can mess around with them just to convey different power dynamics. And also it can be used to perceive the height of a subject. So if you have like a building shot, you can point upward from like the ground and you can just see how much taller the building is compared to whoever the audience is. And yeah, that is it for angles. Does that make sense for everybody? Thumbs up? Yeah?
Thumbs up, cool.
Those aren't the only ones, but those are just the main ones. There's a lot of them. So next is movement. So this is pretty self-explanatory. Camera movements is literally how you move the camera. And there's a couple different techniques that you can use to move your camera, but we're just going to talk about 4 main ones that we generally use. And the main ones, can you guys see my camera if I hold it up? Yeah, cool. So the first one would be the still and steady shot. So this is pretty much when it's just there and it's filming whatever action's going on. Generally for events, I am the one doing the steady shot during creatives, and then Toby will be running around doing the tracking shots of like following the people who are in the creatives, but I would just like stay still so that you can get a different view of it. Yeah, and the next one would be the pan. So this is when the camera moves horizontally with the action. So it's kind of like you're starting from one side and then you're just panning it to the other side. Yeah, you can use it to like show your setting or like to follow somebody with your camera. But it's slightly different from like a slider shot, which goes from like one side and just follows it in a straight way. Panning is more of like going around. And then the tilt is the same thing as a pan, but it's going up and down. So you're pretty much going from the bottom to the sky or the sky to the ground, that kind of thing. And the last one is the tracking shot. So this is pretty much like your freestyle, like depends on your subject kind of shot. So if somebody's walking, you can like follow them in no specific like set of rules. You can just follow them depending on how you want that shot captured. Or if there's like worship, you can like track whoever's moving. Or if there's like sports, you can track the players without getting hit, you know? Yeah, so those are the movements. If that doesn't really make sense though, we do have like a quick video we're gonna show just to like solidify the concepts a little more, which Toby will have ready in a second.
Where are you? There you go.
Does that make sense for everybody? Thumbs up. Cool. So the next part is filming is transitions. There you go. So transitions are basically used to make a video more cohesive or more smooth flowing. And depending on which transitions you use, it can add like a wow factor to it. Like, whoa, that's so cool. But you might not even realize it's the transition that you're like looking at. Transitions can be added in at the end of like during the editing process. But what we like to do as well is in-camera transitions. So we can show you a couple of them. The main ones we use though are the ones listed here. So it'll be like the back in and back out, which like for the example here, it's going in and out of a t-shirt. So let's say you have like a talk and then, or like, let's just use worship because that's like the easiest one. So you have some like a certain worship leader there, and then you pretty much push your camera into like somebody's shirt, not touching them because that's kind of weird, but like you just go in so that their shirt covers the frame. And then your next shot could be you starting off with something or like somebody's shirt covering your frame and then pulling out, and then it'll be another worship leader. So it's just kind of like making things like a little more smooth. Yeah. And then the next would be the whip tilt or the up and down. So they're kind of the same transition. So the up and down is pretty much like you're starting with your subject in front of you and you're just going to tilt upward to the ceiling, and then your next shot or whatever shot you film later on will start from the ceiling and it'll pan down to another person or another subject. And that'll be your two shots that you can put together. The whip tilt is a little more faster. So instead of like just going up slowly, you're actually just gonna go like straight up. Like you're just flicking your wrist upward. That way, like that blur at the top when you're at the ceiling, you're gonna match it by whipping downward. And so that blur creates like a transition in itself when you put them together. And the next is shake it up. So this is when you pan really fast to cause like a seamless blurry transition. So it's kind of like the whip tilt, but you can go side to side or like a more freestyle version of it. So you can have a subject in front of you and then you can whip sideways. And what you want to do with these though is you want to make sure your movement is in the same direction. So if you're whipping this way, make sure your next shot starts from the other side. So it's like that. Does that make sense? So it's not, instead of like your two shots together going this way and then back, like that kind of adds like this weird awkwardness to your video. So you do want to like to pan and then this like your whip and then connect it by keep going the same direction. Does that make sense? Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Anyway, same direction, very important. We've done a couple of more freestyle ones where instead of like just going straight, you can go like downward and then connect it by going like up. Like you just kind of want to think about what movement you're doing, but you just generally want to make it the same direction. Yeah. And then the next three are strap blocking, item wipe, and below ground. They're generally the same idea where you're using something to transition between two shots. So strap blocking, just going like left and right and then switching like shots in that way. And then item wipe is when you're using objects or people or whatever to go to another subject. So for example, you're like sliding from this way, and then let's say there was a worship leader in front of you here, and you're gonna slide this way, and then there's a person in front of you. You're gonna slide all the way until that person covers your frame. And then your next shot, the same thing, you're gonna make sure you're going the same direction. You're gonna start with somebody's shirt again, and then you're gonna pull out. So like, and it'll be in a different subject. Does that make sense? Item wiping? Yeah. And then below ground, we don't really use just because of the physical inability to actually do that at events. But below ground is generally like you start with like a subject and then you go under, like you pull your camera downward so that the ground is the one that's covering your shot. And then you start off from the ceiling and then go down. But you can only really do these shots in certain like venues and stuff. You can't really do that in a gym because like yeah, we don't have access to the ceiling, or we can't really go below floors. I don't know if that makes sense, but there are a couple examples of it if you want to look on YouTube. But yeah, same thing with the movements. If that didn't make any sense, we have a video for that too. So Toby will show you when it's ready. Cool. So that was like a taste of different transitions. Does that make sense for everybody? Yeah, cool. Okay, what's the next part? All right, so what do you guys think is the most important aspect of videography? If Toby's gonna get to that slide. You guys can just answer it in the chat, it's fine.
Answer in the chat below, gang. Gang. What is
gear? Yes, of course. No, it's not. It is not gear. We said it in the beginning. There you go. Let's go. Here we go. Yes, it is storytelling, because despite not having enough gear or anything, yeah, you literally just need a camera, and like you can make a really impactful video just through storytelling. And you don't need like thousands of dollars of gear, even though I know people in here have thousands of dollars of gear. But yeah, so storytelling is the most important part, especially in our service role. And it's the part where you, as a video editor or as a filmmaker, has probably the most creative freedom, because you're taking all these shots, but it's how you put it together and how you interpret your story that is completely unique to you. Like Toby and I completely have two different like work styles when it comes to storytelling. So the two main ones that we generally use are chronological. So you'll see like at a camp, you'll have like day 1 shots at the beginning, you'll have day 2 in the middle, and you'll have day 3 at the end. And that's just kind of like timeline based. And that's perfectly fine if you want to do that. I know Toby likes to do that way. Like you'll notice his work likes to be chronological. The other one that I personally do is like more sequence based storytelling. So I like to combine shots together. Like you have talks and like talk session leaders. I like to put them all in the same place. Like I don't like to spread them out. And like I'll like not put all the creatives together, but I'll put like a lot of worship shots together, or like I'll put like a lot of talent show shots together, and just so they're like blocked off. And that's fine too. That's the way I like to tell stories and how to recap events. But I think the main thing is to understand that simplicity is key, and like whatever you feel is the best is up to you. But just know that like flashy techniques don't need to make a video. Like if you don't understand like transitions or anything like that, that's completely fine. I think the main focus is how you tell that story in your video. And also, if you are serving for videography in the future, if you want to, just understanding what's appropriate. And like, because our videos are public to everyone in the world on YouTube, and you are representing the community, so understanding which shots are the appropriate ones to put in. Like, obviously there are really funny moments that you capture during events, like, or certain people sleeping or snoring, and like that's the funniest thing that you can, like, you want to put that in there but you know you can't, like that's just like not something you want to show to the world. And yeah, and then the last point is to just go into the event prepared, because generally everybody here has been to camp, hopefully, and you know what events happen at certain parts of the day. So just planning when you want to film stuff, getting your gear ready, or getting certain people in specific positions so that they're able to capture shots, so that you can make sure you have all the clips you need by the end of the event. So just making sure you're prepared, that way you're able to tell your story to the best of your ability. And yeah, that's pretty much storytelling. There's a lot more to it, but it's generally, that's what it is. And yeah, so what we're actually going to do now, I know it's like a lot of information. Whoa. I know there's like a lot of information that we just gave you guys, but hopefully you guys were able to pick up on a couple things. And yeah, like hopefully you've learned like some things, maybe transitions or movements. So what we're actually going to do now is we're going to get you guys to watch the TNC video again, but this time we want you to like look more closely at the video and like notice the details, or notice the way the camera is moving, or notice like different techniques that were put in, and then we'll talk about it after. So
yeah, so we'll link it down in the chat over here just right now, and yeah, watch it. We'll give you guys 3 minutes to watch it, and after that give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you guys in a bit. There you go. Nice.
just like let us know when you guys are done.
I think everyone is almost done with the video. Everyone done? Give us a thumbs up if you all are done watching it. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Oh, okay, excellent. Thumbs up, excellent. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, don't be afraid to give them down below.
Does anyone want to share what they've found or like, I don't know, things they've noticed that they never did before? You guys can either like type it or like just say it.
I feel like I'm gonna say something before I go, but basically, I really enjoyed the video. When I first watched it, it gave me goosebumps, and seeing it again gave me goosebumps again. Just reminiscing over that experience that happened last year. You want me to open it? Okay. Thank you. Sorry. My family's over. Okay. But basically, I noticed a lot of the shots and how a lot of us were dancing and how the shots were from a lower angle, and how you guys are talking about how you made us how it's supposed to make the focal point superior, or to be focused and looked at. And also I also remembered about how you guys were talking about whenever there was a leader who was, or a speaker was talking, you'd have two heads inside, and then it would just like focus because of the light and like all the attention. So like, thank you very much for this experience, guys. But yeah, have a good day to all. Feel free to speak and share your side. Okay, I'll give it to after Teresa, if you're still here, I'll give you two so you can give one to Toby. Okay, have a good day, guys. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for sharing.
Bye. Dope.
Anyone else?
Nice. Oh,
I have a question.
Yes.
yes, ma'am.
It's not necessarily to do with like transitions or anything, but I was just curious if like I really like how the song matches the video really well, but which comes first? Like, do you already have a song in mind and you kind of tailor your video to the song, or do you find a song that suits your videos and your shots?
That's a good question. That's good.
Yeah, I like, for me personally, it's not the same for everybody, obviously, but if I'm going to an event, I like to find like 2 or 3 songs that I like first, and then like the first day, I think I kind of will just sort of lean towards what song suits the event a little more. Like, I don't know, it depends on like the vibe. Like, you pick off the vibe at like certain service teams or like the participants and stuff, and so sometimes you just want to play off like a more slower song or like a more like hype song, and I think it just depends on like what you feel when you're actually there. So I think it's just good to have like a couple options first, narrow down, and then narrow it down even more once you actually are there.
Awesome, thank you.
I do wanna add into that. I know that, I don't know if you guys mentioned it earlier, but that's a good question, Sam. And I think what's so awesome is something I didn't know until like later on, is that Mariel and Toby actually had a shared the shared Spotify
The playlist,
like playlist. So it's collaborative, and I remember like Mariel sending me that and then showing me like something about a song. I was like, "What the heck is this?" And she's like, "Oh, it's a collaborative playlist that Toby and I have," and I think that it was a really good idea. So basically, like, she's right, compiling a bunch of songs so you have them in mind ahead of time. So it's not like they're not like super random, but yes, I definitely agree. You do have to kind of feel out what the vibe is when you're there, etc. That's all I wanted to say. Hi guys, I'm Therese, Eric's counterpart if you don't know me. That's all.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, just like Therese and Mariel said, like usually you want to have at least a couple songs in your pocket so that when you go to the event or when you're kind of setting up and preparing, you kind of already have a feel for how chemistry is and how the event is turned out or how the event is turning out. Um, yeah, I think it's nice for Meryl and I to have like a combined like shared playlist because like there are a lot of bands and singers and musicians other than Hillsong and Live Loud and Bethel Music that make like killer music. There's a whole like range and world of Christian music, and being able to just like one discover, two share them, three use them as like tools is like all the more reason to make a playlist and find more songs and to be able to kind of again be a little bit more experimental with songs. Like I know some songs on the playlist are like more poppy than bandy, like more like synth pianos. Some of them are more acoustic than some others. And again, like Mariel said, and Therese said as well, I think it depends on the feel and kind of the best way to do it is just to play off that. Yeah, Sam, killer question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ooh, Kanye West. Yeah, we might put that on there. His new Jesus album. Yes. Any other questions or thoughts or observations?
Or do you want to like share the activity first and then we can go into questions?
Let's do that then. Yes, ma'am.
So we like have like a really easy activity for you guys to do. Well, I guess that didn't work. Anyways, just go. Yeah. So basically, it's your turn. Like we gave you a bunch of different like angles and movements or whatever, and I think the best way to do it is to pretty much apply those is in the next one. It's called the 5-shot sequence challenge. Yeah, so it's pretty simple. You're basically just going to showcase an action or a story from the beginning to the end using only 5 shots, and it doesn't have to be like this complete story. The one that we came up with, or I think Gabe showed it to us, was the opening of a door. So your first shot could be like your intro shot, and that's the person walking towards the door. And when we mean by wide shot, we mean by like a full body shot, like you're showing pretty much, you're more at a distance from the door and you see the entire person. And then your second shot could be the person puts a hand on the doorknob, and that's your second shot, and it can be a close-up of it. And like that's something different from compared to the wide. And the third shot would be when the door opens, and then that's like a medium wide, which is generally, I think, from like your knees up kind of thing. Doesn't have to be that specific. You'll just, yeah, you know what I mean. And then the fourth shot would be like the person walking through the doorway, and you can show that by like doing a close-up of the feet, or if you want, you can just show a different shot of the person walking through the door. And then the last one would be the door closing, and that would be like the same distance as when the door was opening. So it's just kind of like a little like thing, but I think what really plays into this challenge is like you're thinking about your shot and how you want to frame it. And then like there's nothing really fancy with editing or anything. It's just simply about planning your shot and just understanding what story you want to tell. So does that make sense with everybody? If it doesn't, there are a couple like good ones on YouTube that you can like look up. It's called the 5-shot sequence, and you can find some examples on there. And yeah, so we can move on to questions from that if you guys want.
Okay, so thank you, guys, Mariel and Toby, for the workshop. Hopefully you guys learned something new, and we're going to go in towards questions and answers now. And our panel, you could say, is going to be Mariel, Toby, myself, Gabe, Therese and Eric, if you want to chime in. Feel free to either use the link that Angelica provided to anonymously send your questions, or you can say in the chat, or you can actually say it on video as well. So Angelica, do you want to facilitate the questions?
Yes, hello. I am Angelica. I am social media head. My counterpart is Aleo. That is all I have to say. But anyways, so the first question, there are a lot of questions about song choice, but you guys already answered that with Sam. The first question is, do you guys plan or make a storyboard before the event to be more prepared, or do you piece them together or that same day or weekend? Anyone wants to answer?
Toby, you want to go or do you want me to go?
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah. That's a good question. I think when quick story. I think when I first started serving as a video head, I think I wanted to start doing storyboards and kind of already have a plan in mind, have a game plan set so that when I go in, I get those shots, I get them done, I edit the video, I sit in front of the computer for a couple of hours and I'm good. But as the months go by and kind of trying to do that, I think it just gets a little bit harder and harder. Just because for me, I think the layout is so different every time you go to a camp. I think every time you go to an event, there's always that 2, 3, 4 bajillion things that are just that little difference that kind of maybe a storyboard isn't. But maybe that's kind of my shooting style. But maybe for someone else, that kind of shooting style is kind of the way to go and the way to do it. But I think for me, I think it's more so if I get inspired and I see something that I want, I will try my hardest and I'll try my best to be able to replicate that shot and get the shot in my head and apply it to physical camera. Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Marielle?
I think I'm generally the same. I think it's interesting to do a storyboard for a camp, but the thing is, it's you don't know. Obviously, the layout will always be the same in terms of what stuff happens, but I think the shots are always going to be different. And then I like being surprised by what camps or what events show me, pretty much. But when it comes to in terms of storytelling, though, it does come hand in hand with the song choice that I end up settling on. So for example, if I go for a more upbeat one, I pretty much mark parts of the song where I'm okay, this is where I want this specific worship shot, and if I can get it, then that'll be awesome, kind of thing. You'll just be able to kind of visualize what shot you want, especially a climax of a song. Here's where I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna reveal this, or this is where I'm just gonna put shots of things or the environment. So I don't really go into it with a storyboard, but I do kind of have some structure in terms of using the song as my storyboard, if that makes sense.
The backbone?
Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Or unless you guys have anything else to add. No? You good? Okay, so the next question is, why does it take so long for recaps to get uploaded to YouTube, though we do see it at the end of the event?
That's a good question. It's a very, very good question. It is a classic question, right? And I think it depends kind of on, oh man, that's so tough to answer.
You want me to answer, Toby?
Because do it, man. Drop them bars, yo.
I'm not exactly sure the main reason, but hopefully this is right. We have a shared account throughout CFC Canada, and if we dumped all our videos right after the event, we'd be basically filling the YouTube account with only Pacific, but we're sharing it also with Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario and Montreal, and so we want to make sure we spread it out so that we're not bombarding the entire YouTube channel with just Pacific. Also, sometimes people have different files and it's not physically with us when you want to upload it, so it takes a while for the actual file to be uploaded, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sometimes the videos follow a trail of people, and it's just a matter of that video being passed on. That probably ends up getting taking up a lot of the time, is just the passing on of the video.
Also, I find that when I ask, or the rare times I do ask, because you guys are usually on the ball with it, but the rare times that I do ask, it's because sometimes in the past people have also yes, you've seen the recap videos on the day of, but there are tweaks that have been made afterwards, because sometimes these guys, not even sometimes, these guys are always perfectionists, and usually in a recap video, it's so, I guess, in the moment and rushed in a way at some point. So I feel like a lot of the time they go back in and then they change something, even if it's something that's not super significantly obvious. They have to re-upload and then send that again, and then make sure that like through our layers of process that everybody here is like cool with it and that it looks good.
Yeah, just to add on that, essentially what you see at usually a lot of big events or at the end of a camp, it's what you're seeing is pretty much the SDE or same day edit, which is, again, it's mostly a rough cut because it's something that needs to be available within like 15 minutes at the end of an event. Otherwise, there's no time to show it. And that's why it does take a while for it usually to be uploaded. And you might notice that videos such as from like TNCs or RYCs are a bit different than what you saw at the event because it's being touched up afterwards.
Like super touched up.
Good question. That's a good question. Yeah.
And the next question is, how does role assignment work? Are there specific tasks aside from editing, filming, food runs?
Food runs are important,
Food
man.
runs,
Red Bull.
food
The
runs,
best service
funny
role.
enough, I feel like that's like, well,
Actually a
besides
role.
like the biggest like conferences like TNC and the bigger events, but food runs, I feel like that's like me and Eric.
So true,
It's
so
like
true.
feeding the team. Are you good? Here you go. I think I'll let Pat and Gabe answer this one.
Gabe, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Yeah. When it comes down to like role assignments, especially for video, we'll have, for instance, things like YCOM conference. Sometimes your role will be broken down to sections of the day. So that way we don't take away from your entire conference or YCOM experience. So we're like, okay, like you can chill for worship 1. We want you to worship like your heart out and listen for talk 1. We're going to get you to shoot for talk 2, share number 1, and worship number 2 for this day. And then so it can be scheduled out by the, by the breakdown of the day and what specific time of day we may need you. That goes for things like when, for instance, when workshops happen, when all of the participants are split throughout different areas of the venue, we're going to need people in different places. We're going to have to let people know where they need to be, what kind of shots they need to get. All these things are kind of like broken down a little bit prior to the event. Yeah, I feel like I'm missing something. Am I missing something?
I also think
Go ahead.
I think it depends on the team as well, because oftentimes for camps, like let's say Marielle will be at East 1 and Toby will be at South 1, they'll have maybe 2 or 3 like members or like people helping them out on the team. And so whoever's comfortable to like edit, they're probably going to edit. Whoever's comfortable to shoot, they'll shoot. So it really depends per situation. I would say I think sections are really important because burnout is not what we intend to inflict upon anyone. So yeah.
Except the editor, aka Toby. I'm kidding.
Thank you.
Self-inflicted pain at that point.
I know.
Yeah.
But no, that's true. Like, I think it depends as well, like where you are. Obviously, we're not gonna ask like somebody from North 3 to go all the way to like, Abbotsford or Maple Ridge to go just to shoot for a weekend, right? We'll ask people that are closer to the event. And in the case that we can't get anyone, then of course we start trying to pick up from those people that can and that are able to do it. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, last question. What video editing software do you guys use or recommend, like Adobe Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, or like Final Cut?
That's all you, Bruto. That's Toby. That's Toby.
Okay.
I personally like Windows Movie Premiere.
Windows Movie Premiere.
Here. So
I was
I'm
reading
actually
a
gonna.
bunch of different stuff at the same time.
So on the screen, I don't know if you can see it, but here are a few programs that we use but are kind of in the works of using. So the majority of us like to use Adobe Premiere Pro just because one, it's kind of what we grew up on or that we've been using since school, and it's just kind of the most easiest to work with. Yeah, and it's easy. You can kind of adjust it to the way that you like. You can move stuff around here and there and all that good jazz. Final Cut Pro is nice if you have a MacBook or if you are Team Apple, because Final Cut Pro is very so much reminiscent of iMovie. Therese, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if Therese is still here. Yeah, Therese, you're still there. Oh, yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, iMovie is free. Wow. So if you have a MacBook Air, an iPad, an iPhone, that's free. So you can use that to your heart's liking. And I know that there are a couple people in the chat right now that are using iMovie, and it works just fine. Like if you're just looking to cut, videos side by side, that's the way to go. You can use as well Windows Movie Maker. It's sassy, moody, nasty, but it is free. It has gotten a lot better with Windows, but yeah. And if you're a phone user, if you shoot with just mainly your phone, Adobe Rush is a killer app. Thank you, Gabe, for the recommendation. Super strong app. It's very, very similar to Premiere Pro. And the nice thing is that if you use their Creative Cloud like monthly subscription, you can actually bounce off between these two. But for the majority of us, we just like using Premiere Pro. It's strong. It's plentiful enough for us. Yeah, and if everyone has it, then we don't have to worry about changing up the software. Everyone has it. You just need to give the hard drive to somebody, and they're good to go from there. Oh yeah, sorry. DaVinci Resolve is also good. That's free and has everything that Premiere Pro has, but we're all afraid to use that, so we just stick with Premiere
Pro. Afraid?
We're scared of change.
I'm scared of change.
If somebody wants to spearhead that and then explain it later, we will gladly come to your workshop on it.
Thank you. Oh yes, if you're using and the cool thing with Premiere Pro is that they just had an update, so your times of like exporting goes from like 15 minutes to like 3 minutes. So that's like super fast. That's one song in Race Fest, or drive through to McDonald's for a nice coffee or something else. But yeah, you get it. Yeah. It's a good question.
I do want to add something as well.
Yes.
If you guys like feel like obviously you have none of these things, don't underutilize what you have, meaning like your phone. I do know that, like, for example, if you have an iPhone, and iMovie is actually there, I don't actually know like what kind of files you can like import from your camera to your phone and how large the files, like how big the files are. But basically, use that as well. Like, I know it'd probably be harder or 10 times harder on a phone or like on an iPad, but it's still a stepping stone. And once you get the fundamentals of like how certain video editing or editors work, even though they all will look different, essentially the platform is, and what the basics are the same. Like, this is how you import, this is what spreading out your timeline would look like, etc. So don't underutilize your stuff, or don't think that like what you have is not good enough.
True that.
True.
That's all the questions.
Awesome.
Nice.
Ooh. Okay, Gabe, you think it's a good time to share?
Cool. Yeah, let's get it. So first of all, we'd like to thank everyone for coming through. We have a couple things. First of all, if I have not put my little Facebook group down there, that is where we will be submitting all of the photo challenges for the activity for the photo workshop. If you haven't finished that, feel free to get on that ASAP Rocky. And same thing with the video challenges. Everything after you get them all edited, you're going to find our details of the activity, just if you already forgot, things like that will all be found there. That way we can keep the discussion going, and we'll keep each other accountable on these activities. And another thing is that if you guys are liking what you guys are learning so far, let's say if you've really, these workshops have kind of like intrigued your interest, there are things that let's say you've done a photo workshop at like Discovery Camp or YCOM Academy, and you guys want to learn a little bit further. Something that we are looking into right now are advanced photo and video.
Oh no.
Oh, he just froze. Oh, I guess I'll carry on, but hopefully in a few weeks' time we can do like photo and video workshop that's more advanced.
Touch on.
Oh.
Oh, did I freeze?
Yeah, you did.
Sheesh. Oh, okay. Where did I cut off? Where did I cut off?
Just
workshop.
Yeah, workshops. Just reintroduce it.
Reintroduce first. Yeah. So if you're liking what you're learning right now, but you want to take it a step further, we are currently looking into advanced photo and video workshops, ideas that we are looking into right now. For instance, for video, timeline breakdowns and understanding how to piece things together, more into the theory, I'm so distracted by the fact that Toby has Red Bull edited in that photo. I'm so sorry. But if anyone,
editing head,
if anyone has any ideas and like, oh, I want to learn about this specifically, this little nitty gritty thing, like I want to know what drive mode does on your camera, or like what does the 10 on my SD card mean compared to a 5 on an SD card, like little the little things, details, and advanced things that we may have left behind. If you already find yourself proficient with your camera, we want to leave that for maybe at least 2 weeks from now at the bare minimum, just so that we can take what we learned from these workshops and apply it first and start practicing as we still are getting out of quarantine. And then to make sure that everyone kind of has an idea of what they're doing, then we're going to carry on into a more in-depth thing. Yeah. Does that make sense? Pat, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I think that's it. Basically, like it's going to be more of the like technical part, but also the why behind the photo and the video, as to like the storyline and like the purpose behind each shot and each like frame we do. Yeah, it's also a really good opportunity to kind of just reignite your passions or to further develop what you've learned today. And yeah, at least give us 2 weeks. We'll figure out a date and time that works for everyone. And also the photo that Toby just shared right now is very accurate, because oftentimes at events we are seen drinking Red Bull or Monster, which we don't like condone.
We don't condone, yeah. We
don't condone it. But if you ever see us in the back, like that's a nice gift to have. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not a nice gift. We try to not give these guys that.
If you see me yelling at them, it's probably because I'm telling them to stop drinking Red Bull.
Yeah, I think me and Marielle are the ones that are like, no Red Bull, no this. Unhealthy. But keeps them going, but unhealthy.
We try to sleep in like between events, so we do our best.
We try.
I think that's it. There's no more questions, right, Angelica?
No.
Okay. Toby, if you want to close or just wrap up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes, of course. But yeah, again, thank you guys for coming. Really, really appreciate it to get to see your faces and you guys excited to learn about the world of videography and the service. Again, if you guys have any questions, do not hesitate to message Marielle and I, Pat, Gabe, Therese. Don't hesitate to ask us, because that way you can grow, we will grow, and we'll all grow together as one CC.